Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Welcome to this very special webinar. We are delighted today to be joined by Dr. Brooke Goldner. Dr. Goldner is a board-certified medical doctor and the author of multiple best-selling books, including Goodbye Lupus, Goodbye Autoimmune Disease, and her recently released recipe book, Goodbye Lupus, Hello Delicious. Dr. Goldner graduated from Carnegie Mellon University with honors for genetic research in leukemia and neurobiology, graduated from Temple University School of Medicine, and was chief resident at UCLA Harbor Residency. She has published multiple case studies in fully reversing lupus and Sjogren's disease and lupus nephritis with her nutrition protocol. She is the sole autoimmune professor for the plant-based nutrition certification from Cornell University and a member of the Forbes Health Advisory Board. Dr. Goldner has dedicated her life to educating the public, physicians, and testifying to government committees to improve health through better understanding of nutrition that optimizes cellular function, repair, and immunity that has saved her life and thousands of others around the world. So Dr. Goldner, a very warm welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay, so yeah, I'm James O'Toole from Plant-Based Treaty, and joined also with by Anita Krajnc from Plant-Based Treaty. Let's get straight to it. First question, Dr. Goldner, can you please explain to everyone how you reversed your autoimmune condition lupus through dietary change? And what did your diet look like before and after, and how did you find this discovery?
I slipped and fell into it is how I found it. So, I wish that all that list of credentials that you just read off somehow gave me the insight that nutrition was the key to getting my health back. But no, it was quite the opposite. I was fully indoctrinated into the scientific world where, these diseases are genetic, they can be treated, they're chronic, but they can't be reversed or healed. So it was purely an accident. It was no foresight or brilliance on my part, but just a willingness to go with what happened. So I'd been sick since I was a kid. I diagnosed with lupus at 16. And back then I was in kidney failure. I had to take a lot of medication to survive that period of my life. So at the time they diagnosed me, they said I had maybe 6 months to live unless I did experimental treatments. So I know nobody's excited about being experimented on by their doctor, but when the other option is maybe dialysis and possibly death, suddenly become open. So, thankfully the medications they gave me between chemotherapy and steroids and everything else saved my life, and it inspired me to be a doctor and to be able to help other people overcome scary illnesses and still lead good lives. It was a difficult life, but I'd accepted it as part of my life. And even through medical school, I got blood clots. I had to start taking injectable blood thinners because I was having mini strokes. And I just found a way to be grateful every time that no matter how scary the diagnosis, I always made a comeback. And that's how I thought of myself. I'm the comeback kid that somehow, some way, I'm going to keep moving forward. I'm going to keep going after my dreams, and I'll live as good a life for as long as I can, even if it might be shorter than others. So I had no concept of or premonition or even desire to look for alternative treatment. I was just glad the treatments I had kept me alive. Granted, I had to take a lot of medication. I had medications for migraines. I had medication for joint pains. I couldn't go in the sun because of my rashes and autoimmune issues. But I was just glad to be able to wake up every day and study and look forward to my career. Wasn't looking for anything more. I didn't believe there was. I actually was very lucky that my medications were working for me. So what happened was I fell in love. I fell in love with my husband, Thomas Tadlock, and he was and is everything. He was willing to love a sick person and even wanted to marry a sick person. Even when I gave him the whole speech that because of the kidneys and the blood clots, I can't have children. I'm in the process of becoming disabled. There's going to be a period of time where you're going to have to take care of me when I become disabled, and I probably won't live a long life. And he took all of that on unflinchingly. He said I was that great that he'd rather have a short life with me than a lifetime with anybody else. And he was not only willing to, but excited to spend whatever time he had with me. And so that was the best thing ever. Wow, I get to have purpose and passion. I just gotten into my residency, my first choice residency. I was going to Los Angeles and going to be at UCLA, Harvard. And now I had love. It was like life couldn't be any better. So what? I also had lupus. I also had joint pain. I also had kidney problems, but I was excited. So he gave me that. And then on top of that, my husband, he also has a best-selling book called Miracle Metabolism. And at the time, his obsession was, he was in grad school at the time in exercise science, was in understanding what the right human diet should be for the fastest metabolism possible. Because as you might be aware, many people are aware, even people who are nutritionists, even health coaches, even personal trainers, no one seems to know the right diet for humans, right? High carb, high fat, low fat. Oh wait, don't eat 1 meal a day, 3 meals a day, 6 meals a day. Nobody knows what the heck humans are supposed to eat. But you can ask a scientist in any other field, and they can tell you exactly what other animals are supposed to eat. We have lost it. We've lost our connection to nature and human biology. So he was fascinated by this. For him, it was purely aesthetic. He wanted to sculpt the perfect body. He loved exercise and he loved transformation. And what he was trying to figure out is, what is the ideal nutrition to have the fastest change in metabolism where anybody can have a six-pack quickly, not over years, but let's do it, right? And so that's what he was studying. And so when he wasn't getting the answers from his professors, he started to go into the industry. He made friends with someone who made supplements. And this was a PhD biologist who studied deficiencies in people. They said, tell me the deficiencies. Well, usually they're minerals, often vitamins, unless someone takes a supplement. And so I started looking at, how do these deficiencies create metabolic issues? Okay, cellular function goes down, metabolic rate goes down. Where do you get minerals from? Oh, vegetables. They grow right in the soil. There's minerals there. And so he started to put together what became our hyper-nourishment protocol. I saw on your Plant-Based Treaty Facebook page and website, there's pictures of our smoothies, and my face is all over the place. You need some pictures of Thomas, because he was the original guy, right? And so when we were getting married, I said, well, you're flying to New York on a regular basis, training celebrities for their music videos and MTV. I want to look like an MTV music star at my wedding. Who doesn't? What woman doesn't want to look amazing? So I asked him to train me, and I said, I'll do a nutrition plan as long as there's no meat in it. Because at the time I was a vegetarian. I'd been a vegetarian since I was about 13. I read John Robbins' book, Diet for a New America. My whole family read it right at my bat mitzvah. So that was the last party we ever had that had meat in it, was my bat mitzvah, because my neighbor was vegetarian and he handed my dad that book. Changed my whole family. But this was in the 80s. So no one even knew what a vegetarian was. A vegan was something we had no concept of it. So my whole family had given up meat. But at the time, we kind of just substituted it with more eggs and dairy, thinking we were doing something that was good for animals and the planet, but not taking it as far as people know to take it now, if you really care about those things. So I ate dairy products like crazy, tons and tons of cheese. I didn't like milk, but tons of cheese. But, it takes 8 pounds of milk to make 1 pound of cheese. So I was like, getting lots of it. And I ate eggs for breakfast, eggs for dinner, lots of processed garbage. And so my husband looked at my dad and he goes, if you really want this, he goes, first of all, just so you know, you're perfect. You don't have to lose any weight. You're perfect. I said, don't worry. It's not a trap. It's not a trap. I want to get fit. He goes, all right, you got to give up all this dairy. Dairy keeps people fat. It's not going to work. So, okay. And he said the eggs, yep, tons of saturated fat in eggs, unless you like the whites only. I'm like, no, that's gross. So, okay, get rid of that. And then he goes, okay, we're going to have to add tons of raw vegetables. We're going to have to add omega-3 fatty acids. We're going to have to add more water. So I accidentally became a high raw vegan without even knowing that I was a vegan. I didn't even have that definition in my head. And what happened was, within 3 months, I actually went from a size 11 to a size 3 at the time, got really ripped and shredded for my wedding. But also, I stopped having all the symptoms of lupus I had had consistently for the 12 years that I'd had it. So at the time I was 28, I'd had lupus since I was 16. And for the first time, I had amazing energy. I could work a 30-hour shift on call as an intern and then go to the gym after. I felt so good, which is not normal even for people without disease. I had no pain. I had no migraines. I felt really, really healthy at a time when I should have been high stress working as my intern year. And right before our wedding, I had my first set of labs that showed that there was no sign of lupus. My kidney function was normal. The blood clots had disappeared. And actually, this October, it will not only be our 20-year anniversary, but it'll be 20 years of me being lupus-free. I have never relapsed ever in 20 years. I've had 2 children that should have never been able to do. And I am 48 years old with 0 health problems. And I feel better than I felt in my 20s. And all because I fell in love. So the short answer is I fell in love. The slightly longer answer, well, the longest answer is in my books, but yeah, that's how I got there. That's how I got to what I'm doing now. We took our time. When I got well, we didn't know it was a diet, because why would I think it was a diet? If diet had something to do with disease, I would know it. I just graduated med school. But after years of remission, we started, and then having my first son without any relapse, we started to realize something's weird here. There's a glitch in the matrix. Like, I shouldn't be lupus free. I shouldn't be healthy. I shouldn't be a mom. And that's when we started looking as 2 scientists at what did we do and how could my nutrition have possibly impacted cellular repair. And maybe metabolism is not just how quickly you can burn fat, but how quickly your cells can repair themselves, how quickly your immune system can get you back to baseline. And so then we started testing it on people and studying it. And when we could get the same results in everybody who volunteered, that's when we came to the public. That's when I broke Goodbye Lupus. And at this point, yeah, we've been able to help people around the world, even with our free content and our books and things, reverse diseases that should be irreversible, right? From MS, rheumatoid arthritis, scleroderma, Sjogren's, lupus, and even things like heart disease, because this is not about disease, but about the nutrition that optimizes cellular function and repair. So yeah, that's how we got where we are.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, first of all, congratulations on your anniversary. That's amazing. And I should also add thank Varun and Jennifer for joining us as well, helping with the tech in the chat. So thanks to them. I just have a quick follow-up before Anita is going to ask a question. As your health improved and the lupus went away, I guess did you transition off traditional medicine? And was that a difficult decision to stop taking the prescribed medicine as your health improved?
Yeah, so I actually waited a year before coming off my medicine, because at the time it didn't make sense. I'd been sick with lupus since I was a kid, and I'd never been off all medicine. That was what was keeping me alive. So even when I had no symptoms and my lab tests were normal, it was still like we were calling it a remission. I was still seeing the doctor every month. They were still running my labs regularly. It was this kind of weird space for all of us. We didn't really know what to do. And so I did come off of the other medicines. I don't have antibodies. I don't need to take other medicines. I stopped taking things for pain. The last thing I came off was the blood thinner. So I had to inject myself every day with blood thinners, because I was actually having mini strokes in medical school. I was sending blood clots into my brain. I was getting double vision. And so that can kill you. If a mini stroke becomes a major stroke, I could die, I could be disabled. And so that was the one sticking point that my doctor and I were both nervous about. And then finally, after a year of not only no symptoms, but the kind of blood clots I get are formed by antibodies that you can measure. And so all of the lab tests continued to show that I had no antibodies for clots. So at that point, I had to talk with my rheumatologist and said, listen, I don't want to die, but I hate injecting myself if I don't need to. Plus, every time I get a paper cut, it'd be a horror movie scene. I'm covered in blood. So I said, let's try it. Let's keep testing me. And if I have a symptom, an issue, an abnormal lab, I'm right back in the chair. We put medicines back. And they said, okay. And I said, why am I still taking blood thinners? And he said, you're treating my anxiety because I'm terrified to take you off of it. And I was the kind of patient that scared my doctors. I always went to the worst possible scenario. I didn't just get a little sick. It was like, what's wrong with your kidneys? Oh, you've got 6 months till they're gone. What's going on with these antibodies? Oh, you're having mini strokes. Like, oh crap. So I scared him. I said, well, I don't want you to be anxious, but I don't want to take meds I don't need. So let's just try it together. And after another year, he fired me. He said, listen, I don't know what to do with you. You take no medicines. You have no symptoms. Your labs are normal. If I didn't know your chart from before you came to me, I would wonder if you ever had lupus. He said to the med student, she alleges to have lupus, but she's fine. Like, I can't find anything wrong. So best thing in the world that I wish on all of you, and a lot of my clients have reported to me when this has happened to them, getting fired by your rheumatologist. I never had to go back. Nothing bad has ever happened. I still get my labs once a year now just to keep looking and going, yep, still good. But yeah, that was a scary process. Now it's easier when I'm treating people. I now know it's reversible. I know how it looks. And it's easier to say, yes, you did it. You're healthy. But back then, as the first person to do it, yeah, it was very slow because I want to live more than I want to be off meds. Like I'm willing to do whatever it takes to be alive. I'm not anti-doctors, not anti-meds. I'm pro what works. And if natural living and nutrition's doing it for me, hallelujah. And if I ever need a medication, I'd take it, But yeah, thankfully it'll be 20 years soon, 19 years and change. And I have never needed to go back on any medication, even through my pregnancies.
Great. Yeah, I wanted to jump into policy change because I watched a lot of your interviews, and I was sort of obsessed when I first learned about you, and I bought all the books, and just I was very intrigued. And you said you became a high raw vegan, but in particular focusing on cruciferous vegetables, and you've really popularized the green smoothies. So what I wanted to ask you is, like, for a group like the Plant-Based Treaty and other social movements groups, like how can your work help in our efforts to promote diet change and policy change? In particular, how can we get the green smoothie into various institutions like hospitals, schools, universities? Do you have experience in that? Like, have you been approached by policymakers, by hospitals, schools, universities to introduce the hyper-nourishing green smoothie as a way to improve, physical and mental health?
Boy, would that be nice. Not necessarily, no. I have testified for the U.S. Dietary Guidelines Committee a few times. They don't really budge much. That's why I like to go straight to the people, because it is slow for there to be change. I have seen there have been, up until recently, now the focus is all different. But in the last few years, there was a lot of changes policy-wise happening in Congress here. There was a whole committee who was working on making sure all federal agencies had plant-based meals. And even in places like New York City, every public school is required to have plant-based meals. And every public hospital in New York City, the primary meal is a plant-based meal. You have to ask for something that's not plant-based. So I do see policy changing. I've spoken at medical schools. It's always the students that invite me. So that's pretty cool. I've spoken in different medical schools here in the States, and also online, even through the pandemic, at schools in Australia, New Zealand, other places where they want the information. The new generation of doctors want to know better. They want to do better. And thanks to the internet, they're exposed to it more. When I went to medical school, it was just what you learned in your classroom. So I definitely have been able to reach them. Kaiser Permanente asked me this year to be the keynote speaker for their wellness event. It got canceled last minute because it got snowed in. But there were supposed to be thousands of doctors there for their big wellness event. So when a big hospital system like that says you're the expert, that means a lot to me, because their system is designed more for wellness, because Kaiser is both the insurance company and the hospital. So they save money when their patients do not go to the hospital. They get to keep the insurance money and not pay it out, right? So there are systems where I'm getting more traction. But I do think it's very much still a people's movement, just like what you're doing, that we're not going to get change without pushing for it. And it's not going to be one of us that has that answer, but really all of us coming together, pushing for it to happen. It's actually a project my son wants to work on. Solomon, he wrote his own book, 50 Comebacks for Vegan Kids. And he now, for the first time ever, he is in a school that has plant-based meals. And it's his first time in private school, and he's very lucky that we can put him in this private school. We weren't able to do that before. We could do that for him, and he really wanted to go to the school, and he got accepted into it, and it's a wonderful school. And they happen to have someone who makes fresh food for the students, and they always have a beautiful plant-based meal for him, and it's like curries and tofu and salads, and I mean, it's beautiful. And it really struck him because he's 16, and since he started preschool, he's always had to bring a lunch. And starting in kindergarten, he made his own lunch. So he always made his avocado Ezekiel sandwiches and brought a bunch of fruit and things like that. But he's always had to bring his own food. And so it's really struck him this year. It's not right. Because all of my friends in public school, they're not even eating a vegetable. They're eating burgers and fries and pizza and ice cream and chips with a soda. And he goes, I don't know what's going to happen to them. They're going to be sick people. He said, I'm the only one of my friends that didn't have acne in public school, and they all said it was hormones. He goes, I have hormones, but it's the diet, and he understands it, but he grew up in this family, and so I really love it that he's coming to that on his own. And that's what he wants to do something about that now. And he's really formulating ideas now about how maybe he can push more for these changes to happen in our public school system. So I think we all have to own the piece of it that means something to us, because when we have meaning, we have passion, and suddenly we have all this energy to go after it.
Great. We only have a couple more questions because we wanted to open it up to participants. So James, you got a couple questions there.
Yeah, so Plant-Based Treaty, this month we launched a 30-day Green Smoothie Challenge to encourage people to make the green smoothie a daily habit. What mind shift or practical tips would you suggest to help people really make it a daily routine? And do you have any, and I know you do because I've read your books, do you have any success stories that might inspire them to stick with it?
Yeah, so what's really neat about the smoothies is that they are just an easy way to get in the nutrition your body uses for cellular repair, metabolism, and for fighting against illnesses, right? So when I teach this to doctors, I love to really dive into this because it's not talked about in medical school. And thankfully, my experience as a physician and also as a researcher helped me really understand how nutrition impacts things like cellular function and immune function. And what's beautiful is how simple it can be, right? The green smoothie seems like it's a bit too easy to be so impactful. But what we figured out is if you make it the way we teach, and you've been posting all sorts of stuff from us. So we have free information at smoothieshred.com. That's our website that my husband made as a public service. And we have free recipes there and videos that teach about this. But what we found is essential for optimizing not only your metabolism, but your immune system's ability to do things like fight diseases, keep inflammation down, even fight the aging process is very connected to your nutrition level, is that if people consume about a pound a day, or if you're not in the US, 454 grams a day of high nutrient vegetables, like cruciferous vegetables, definitely number one. Spinach can hang with it. It's not cruciferous, but pretty high nutrient. If you can have a pound of that a day, raw, it has to be raw. And the studies now are catching up with why, and I can talk about that in a moment if you want. But you can have a pound of that raw high nutrient vegetables a day, and about, if you're not sick, a handful of flax or chia seeds a day, or like a couple of tablespoons of cold pressed flax oil. And you can get in about 96 ounces of water a day, which is like 2.8 liters. That gives your body the raw ingredients it needs to repair damage and keep inflammation low, go after issues like cancer cells, viruses, and other infectious agents. And it really keeps your body in a state of supreme health. So it's very, very simple in that we realized if we shove all of that in the blender and throw in fruit for flavor, we can get everyone to do it. My first test subjects, I didn't have the smoothies yet. And I was trying to make people chew that. And for me, that was fine because I love raw vegetables. I'm not a fruit person. If you give me a good container of guacamole, I will eat pounds of broccoli and cauliflower. Boom, no problem. But a lot of people, especially people eating Western diets, have never eaten raw vegetables in their life besides a piece of lettuce on a burger. And it was just too much. But people like the smoothies. So it's just a really simple way where you can blend that up and you put a straw in it, and then you just go about your day. You go shopping, you do your work, you talk to your friends, and passively, easily are able to get the nourishment you need for optimal health. And if you're already healthy, it just keeps you young and energized and vibrant and creates wonderful bowel movements. It just, everything gets better when you nourish yourself that way. And so we've had people with just hyper-nourishment alone, especially if you don't eat inflammatory, although I teach that hyper-nourishment, this intentional overdose of nutrition, whether you like smoothies, and if you don't like smoothies, you can still eat it, right? You can make chia pudding instead. We have tons of recipes in my Goodbye Lupus, Hello Delicious book if you want to chew instead of drink. But if you can get that nutrition in every day, then your body's going to be a much healthier place. And what it's going to do is it'll also crowd out other stuff. Sometimes people aren't ready to give up all the bad stuff, even though they know it's not good for them. But adding something psychologically is a lot easier, right? I'm not saying never eat chips. I'm saying add. And so what happens is when you start feeling better and you start looking better, your body starts working better, and then you're not as hungry for the other stuff because you happen to be full of all that smoothie, right? So it kind of naturally, I call it the gateway drug to healthy eating. right? You start to incorporate that, you're going to eat less of the junk, and you start feeling better. And so in our Smoothie Shred Facebook group, which is our free Facebook community for people who want to follow what we teach and share recipes and celebrations, a lot of people just adding hypernourishment, especially to a plant-based diet where they're not getting any negative stuff. They are losing body fat. They're having stronger workouts at the gym. Their allergies are going away. Their blood pressure is coming down. Their blood sugar is normalizing. All of these things are happening effortlessly, right? Versus like having a huge focus on what you eat. If people are sick, then we actually switch them to eating only raw with a higher level of hypernourishment than even that, so that they can really reverse disease and get to health and then maintain with that hyper-nourishing plant-based diet. So it's something wonderful everyone can add. There's benefits to everyone. You know, it's not like, oh, if you are already, you know, if you don't have a disease, then you add the smoothies and something bad happens. No, you just end up with a glowing complexion. You feel great. Your systems are working well, and you're less likely to get sick. So we have amazing results across the board, not just in the published ones that you mentioned, with people who are free from lupus, Sjogren's, off the kidney transplant list, and stay healthy years out. The most recent case series was let's check in with people who reverse lupus and Sjogren's within 4 to 6 weeks. Actually, it was 2 to 6 weeks. How are they doing now? 4 years, 6 years, 7 years out, still off all meds, no symptoms, doing well, right? But multiple sclerosis, people have been able to actually reverse lesions off of their MRI. Someone in my rapid recovery group right now, the rapid recovery is a program where I work with people every day to make sure they're getting it right, and also help them with the other lifestyle factors that make people sick, because it's your foods, but also your moods, your stress, your sleep, other things that can trigger illness. So I really holistically help people in all areas. But in my current rapid recovery group, we have someone with MS who in the beginning of the group was using a cane, barely able to get around. Her knees would collapse when she stood up. She's now not using a cane at all, and we're just finishing the 4th week. No more cane, walking around, her legs are strong, no more dragging her feet. That's 4 weeks, right? Scleroderma, we've had people measure their skin elasticity going up 20% in the first 2 weeks. So around everywhere, from even things like heart failure. Someone who was in the hospital and told she would not survive her heart attack. Her family came to say goodbye, but one of her family members brought the blender with my smoothie in it. And 5 days later, she walked out of the hospital. She's still alive today. That happened in 2017. And she's still alive and healthy, no more chest pain. So it really just gives your body what it needs to repair the damage, because it turns out your body already knows how to be healthy. It's in your genes. If it didn't know how to be healthy, you'd have been born sick. But it's run out of the fuel. It's run out of the ability to repair the damage. And so our protocol very simply allows people a way to get the ingredients in, so that your body can then do the work on cellular repair, and you don't need to direct it. We have people who usually within the first few weeks, they have to change their prescription because suddenly they don't need their reading glasses anymore. We've had people reverse glaucoma, a guy in his 70s, within 5 weeks, glaucoma it was gone. So it's one of those things where you don't even need it to be specific for diagnosis. Your body will know what to do, and it's going to be very grateful when it gets those ingredients. So again, you don't have to do it through smoothies. It just simplifies it. So you're not constantly like, okay, I need to eat 4 more ounces of broccoli. I need to chew up this much more cabbage. It's kind of like you blend it up in the morning, you take it with you, and you know by the end of the day you're nourished. Is that enough motivation?
Yeah, that's great. Here's a question from Nicole. Nicole, it's a great question. So you often hear people say that they die for their kids or the spouse, and like they're the priority, but then the same people don't eat healthily or exercise. In your rapid recovery group, you often emphasize the importance of self-care that generally uplifts our mood and emotional well-being. Why do you think it is such a challenge for people who have this care for their, this love for their family, but then they find that mental block, they find it difficult to exercise or eat healthily?
A lot of that has to do with how we were raised and the messages we received growing up. So, and a lot of time in my group is spent on this. I actually take people back to their childhoods to find the messages they received and the lessons that they learned. And some of the lessons are beautiful, and many of them are painful. And so, for example, if you grew up with an amazing mother, she was the best mother, she was always there for you, and that mother never did anything for herself, and always was there for you. But, you know, you'd go to bed, she'd still be cleaning the floor. You'd wake up, she's making breakfast. Now, of course, she ended up with all these awful diseases and, you know, is now on a ton of medications. But if you had that experience, there might be a part of your brain that says, oh, in order to be a good mother, I have to never think of myself or do self-care, right? A lot of people have things like that. And so then we have to kind of move through that. Well, can you be a better mother with self-care? And the answer is yes, right? I know for myself, I am a good mother and I am there for my son. We have a beautiful relationship. And one of the ways that I'm able to be a good mother, able to be a good wife, able to be a good doctor is because I take really good care of myself. So I have so much energy. And if I right now was sick with lupus and barely able to move, and I was with a migraine and joint pain and sick, who would I be helping? And how could I, you know, my son would barely know me, right? I'd be in the bed. And we actually had a member of our group where partway through the group, she finally emerged from her bedroom to come downstairs to sit with her family and watch TV, and they applauded because they've missed her so much. So I always talk to people about that, that if you think that you cannot be a good parent by taking time out for yourself or self-care, eventually you're going to be so sick, you'll be an absent parent. You won't even be there. So do you want to be there for your kids while barely, like, you feel like crap, but you're physically there? Or maybe take some time away from them to exercise, do meditation, do other things that feel good for you. And then you come back so fully powered and charged that the experience they have with you is so much more beautiful. So in order to be a better parent, we have to have better health, right? So that's one thing. I will manipulate people and say, well, if you continue to get sicker and sicker, your kids will have to stay home and take care of you instead of going out and pursuing their dreams. That's not being a good mom, right? If you're a healthy mom, then they're free to leave and pursue their dreams. But there's lots of other things. A lot of it is self-esteem. I was just working with someone today where she believed that, you know, from what the messages that her parents gave her, that she was only lovable if she was perfect. You know, if she'd have made a mistake, then they were angry and she felt unloved. And if she got perfect grades, everything perfect, then they were nice. And so she thought my value is in what I do and what I earn, not in who I am. Well, if that's true, then you're going to keep giving and serving and doing, right? Hoping that you're still valuable instead of taking time for yourself, because then you're worthless, right? You're not giving and doing. So for many people, it's different. Some people, it's just lack of self-esteem. It's can be even feeling, you know, addicted. There's a lot of addiction issues. I've had people tell me sugar was my best friend growing up. Whenever life was bad, sugar was there for me. So I have to spend a lot of time helping people identify their reason for not taking care of themselves. And while there are themes, there's differences. And when I help people see themselves and see the child in them that deserved to grow up and be healthy and happy as well, then they can start nurturing that inner child the same way they nurture their other children. I add one more kid to their roster and make sure that kid is well nourished, that kid has fun, that kid gets to play, that kid gets a good night's sleep, right? And so if you know how to nurture other kids, you can nurture that inner child too. And so that's a lot of the work that I do when I work with people every day, is helping them really become unstoppable by figuring out what truly is stopping them. Not like, oh, I'm a procrastinator, but actually why? Where does it come from? What are the beliefs you have that you need to let go of? And how do we start healing that part of you so then you feel free to take really good care of yourself from now on?
Dr. Goldner, I wanted to jump back to the policy thing the plant-based treaty does. What I love about your work is, you know, you found a really good answer to reverse something that people thought was irreversible, like autoimmune diseases. Right. You had lupus when it was very unusual for a young child to have lupus. But you've noted in a lot of your interviews that it's heartbreaking to see how younger and younger children are having lupus, and it's spreading around the world because the standard American diet is spreading around the world. And through our work with the plant-based treaty, like, we look at some of the big pictures at the global level. For example, if you look at per capita meat consumption, in 1980, it was 30 kilograms per person. Now it went up 50% in 40 years. It's 45 kilograms per person. So we know that meat, dairy, eggs, and processed foods are the cause of a lot of these autoimmune diseases, diabetes, obesity, cancers. So, you know, it's remarkable how in your journey, you found an answer that really helps, right? And at the same time, the world sort of, it's like we're on the Titanic and we're heading towards an iceberg, but we got to turn the ship around and we have the answers. So I'm always going back to the issue of like, how do we, level up, like diet change on an individual level, but also policy change? How do we do it? And Nilgun, one of our activists in Turkey, asked, could you please share your thoughts and experiences regarding how the meat industry strategically manipulates public perception through ads and campaigns, encouraging people to consume more animal-based products, which are often more expensive, but sometimes they're cheaper because they're subsidized. But what suggestions do you have? Because you have the answer. So the question is, how do we get the world of humans to, start eating more cruciferous vegetables and having that as the main part of their diet, as we probably did generations, as your grandmother and great-grandmother, probably ate on a regular basis. So can you sort of touch on those big issues? Because that's where the plant-based treaty is coming from. Like we want to sort of change the world because we're going in the wrong direction. So how do we get people back on track?
I wish I had those answers, or I would have done it already. I feel like we are doing that, right? We're bringing up public awareness, and it has changed, right? Because back, 20 years ago, first of all, vegan wasn't even a term people really threw around much. They didn't really know what it even meant, and there wasn't even any kind of vegan products around, right? When I first became vegan, we didn't have vegan cheeses or vegan, all the stuff that's in the supermarket. There was just soy milk and almond milk. That was it, right? And now there's entire sections. Walmart has its own brand of vegan meats, right? So I think that it's actually been changing at lightning speed. Is it fast enough for us to not hit the glacier? I don't know. But I do believe that's happening. Even the fact that Congress was considering this and saying, hey, in terms of the environment and health, we need to have more plant-based options. Again, I don't know what's happening now because we haven't heard much from Congress in a bit. But there's different icebergs ahead right now there. But I do think because it's become part of the public conversation, it is changing. And what you're doing is changing it. What I'm doing is changing it, bring it to the public. That's why every week on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, I do my free wellness Wednesdays, because it's a public service. I'm not selling anything. I'm just giving public service and information. And what happens is if people start to watch who maybe wasn't aware of it before, and they start getting information. And then as people do it, they spread it too, right? The biggest evangelists of health are the people who got healthy, right? We're like, you got to listen to me. This is amazing. And so and that's why it's grown exponentially. I mean, I never advertised what I did. I went from when I published Goodbye Lupus, I had 100 followers on Facebook. I had no Instagram. I had nothing going on. And now I have, let me see here. I have let me look at Facebook here. So now there's 105,000 followers there. And on Instagram, I think I have 118,000. And on YouTube, there's like 100. They're like, what? But that all happened naturally and quickly, because people were sharing, this worked for me. You got to check this out. Isn't that what you did? Isn't that why you're talking to me right now? You tried it and you went, whoa, this is awesome. I got to share this, right? So I think that we are all doing that. We are all sharing our experiences. And thanks to the internet, we can share it pretty loudly. And it starts to spread. And it's this dominoes. I see the dominoes just going in every single direction. So I do think that's happening. Documentaries have made a difference. When I was in Eating You Alive, I think that was in 2015, 2016. There's been so many since then. I was just in one, Disease Reversal Hope, but there's so many different documentaries out there now. So the conversation is changing. Doctors are going to these conferences and learning. I've taught many doctors, hundreds of doctors at conferences that are interested. Whereas the first time I mentioned it on a stage, everyone was like, what did she say? And the crowd keeps growing bigger and bigger and bigger. So I do think this is something that'll change from the bottom up. I think it is slow, like anything. I mean, look what happened with cigarettes. There were studies in the 1950s saying that there was a link between cigarettes and cancer, but it didn't become even illegal in public buildings in the Congress until in the 80s, right? I mean, even in the 80s, I was going on airplanes and people were smoking, right? We were in restaurants. Now it's weird. Now it's like, oh my gosh, no, why would you do that, right? So I think it's happening. But for people, especially just getting into it now, it feels like it's too slow. But for someone like me that's been here, I mean, I've been a pioneer in this field since early days. it's amazing how much it's caught on from where it started. So I don't know, I see it happening, but if I knew how to get to the policy changers, I'd be there. If you know somebody in Congress will sit with me, like I would happily spend my day with them. But that's hard. They're busy. They're doing things. So that's why I do it this way. I continuously, if someone says, "Can I talk to you?" I go, "Sure, let's do it." But I think that's your area, right? Is looking at how do we get to the policy changers, and I think that's difficult. I think if you get the opening and you want to bring in experts, like, yeah, let me know, I'll join. But I think that is the hard part.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Milgoon's question was also about like meat, dairy, and eggs. There is, you know,
Yeah.
companies like Cargill, which is based in the US. They have a revenue of almost 200 billion a year. So we're up against that, and they have projects to have people increase consumption of meat, dairy, and eggs in Asia, for example. They want to get 100 million people to do backyard chickens. And they're largely plant-based societies, so they go in there. And it's much like tobacco, you know, it started fading in pockets in the West, and then they expand their markets elsewhere. But we do have a lot of,
and it's troubling. Yeah, and I was going to say, I mean, and part of that came from their opening came from, you know, one of the first macronutrients discovered under a microscope was protein. And then at the time, like every scientist, I guess there's a little bit of hubris that comes with scientific discovery, go, this is the key to life, it's protein. And that has just taken off. And so every company, oh, we're protein, we're that. People are dying of overdosing and all these proteins, but it's just so in their heads, and it is capitalized over and over again. Even there's been changes there. Like, remember dairy, when I was a kid, their slogan was "Milk does the body good." Now it's like "Got milk" or "Milk life." Why? Because you can't say that. It's wrong, and you can get sued. It does not make a body good. It is actually very deadly. I mean, it's going to increase cancer, autoimmune disease, asthma, all sorts of things. So there's been some changing there, but there's also doctors that are just as vulnerable to the marketing because there's still no medical training in this area. And so, you know, I have people come to me who are in kidney failure now because their doctor put them on a keto diet for their autoimmune, and then that triggered their kidney failure, made diabetes worse. Now they've got, you know, their lipids are 8 times what they should be. And I have to undo all that. And it came from a doctor who read something that seemed, you know, interesting. And when you don't know how to really go through the studies, because a lot of these studies are paid for, then if you don't know how to piece them out or to at least look at the conflicting data and look at it in the right way, you could get really on the wrong track, even as a physician, because physicians don't do this work. Like, I do this work every day. Most of them just, you know, oh, they read something, go, oh, that's interesting. And then they suddenly start doing that. So it's still, that's what I'm saying, it's still in the weeds. And that's why it's so important to keep sharing the information with people to help them get it right.
there are some great questions in the chat, Dr. Goldner. So one is from Wall, the eternal question: how do you get people who have chronic disease to give it a try? Another question, I'll just give you 3 and see which ones you want to answer. Agnes Chesky asks, can people who had kidney stones have the green smoothie? And then finally, Noel Santos in Portugal asks, could I ask you what you think about fasting and if you recommend stop fasting with a specific smoothie?
Okay, so in order to get people to start them, I usually just say, you know what, just tell them to, let's see if we can try it. Maybe we can do a challenge together. Maybe we can just, you know, let's team up and see if we can do this together and see how we feel. Let's try it. Why not? No harm done, right? So usually if you can get people to agree to a certain period of time, it's kind of like okay, let's do it, right? What could be the harm? Let's see what happens. And the second question was about kidney stones. So actually, so I've gone into depth. If you go to my YouTube, I have so much content there that I give for free to help people. So one of the issues, and this I think a lot of this stuff comes from industry where they try to kind of get people off the track by throwing in these little red herrings. One of the few things that I did learn about nutrition in medical school is that kidney stones are caused by diets that are high in meat and where people are dehydrated. That meat creates very acidic urine. And when your urine's very acidic and you're dehydrated, then these stones can precipitate out. They can come out of the solution. So kind of like, you know, you can put a certain amount of salt in something in water and stir and stir and stir, and it's gone. And then you add a little bit more and suddenly the salt falls out. Well, it falls out of solution and you get a stone. So the answer is actually, if you can eat a plant-based diet, and especially a very alkaline one, which green smoothies make your diet very alkaline, makes the urine alkaline. I have people whose urine pH is 8, sometimes 8.5, right? So if you can have alkaline urine and you're very hydrated, which is what I teach for hyper-nourishment, you will actually decrease your stones. My husband used to have kidney stones when I met him, but he was on a high meat diet. Ever since becoming 100% plant-based, he has never had a stone again. And he was drinking a gallon of water both ways, but the difference was taking out the meat. Right. So for most people, that will get rid of the stones. Now, there are some people who genetically will always make stones, and some of those, or they have certain issues, like if you have kidney disease, if you have diabetes, if you've had gastric bypass, some of those folks are more likely to create stones because of their health problems. Then you can take out the highest sources of oxalate like spinach and beet greens, but still want to have the kale and broccoli and cauliflower and other things because, again, the alkaline urine. So those folks can still do it and probably should do it. So that was the second question. And then the third one, give me a reminder.
So that question was from Noel about fasting.
Fasting, yes. The neuron just fired. So fasting, I don't typically recommend fasting because I recommend the opposite, overdosing in nutrition. That said, there are some people who do better in terms of food addiction with fasting. So they go, oh, if I start eating at 11 or 12, I tend to have less cravings and finish my meals and do better. Or if I stop eating by a certain time, I tend to have less cravings. If that works for you and you can get all your nourishment in, that's fine. But typically for people to eat the amount of healthy food I want them to, they're eating all day long. And that's great. You don't have to cut that off when you're eating the right things. So if you're trying to reverse disease, you need nourishment. Fasting can make people feel better, but that just means that not eating was better than what you were eating before, right? But nourishment, especially hyper-nourishment, is going to give your body what it needs to repair the damage and get you well and keep you well.
James, did you want to look at the next 3 questions?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of questions, one from Steph and Cindy, and they were a bit similar. Going back to what might resonate with policymakers, have you ever done any randomized or peer-reviewed studies of the benefits of green smoothie? Because that that data could be something that helps.
It could be, but no,
yeah.
I am working morning till night, 7 days a week, healing people.
Right.
So yeah, I do not have any big ones. Although I do have, like for example, there's a cardiologist that had me write nutrition plan for his clinical trial that's happening right now. I can't say the results yet because it's still happening. So I have been asked to write for, this will be for heart disease, but I just don't have the capacity to do that right now. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Okay. Good. Another question from Len. Any concerns about microplastics from the blender jug? Should he switch to a glass jug?
I haven't seen it be a problem. So there's the theoretical fears of issues, and then there's actual things that come up. So at this point, we have helped thousands of people around the world. Between the people who are doing, so Smoothie Shred alone has, I think, 50,000-60,000 people in it. And then on top of that, all the people that we've worked with every day, what we found, whether they use a plastic jug or not, is diseases go away. So if we saw a tipping point where it went the other way, we'd investigate it, but we haven't seen that. Now, if it makes your mind happier to use the glass jug, or even I think Vitamix now has a stainless carafe, go for it. I personally still use it. And what they found even with cruciferous vegetables is it actually decreases the development of things like cancer when you are exposed to carcinogens. So that's part of the really cool research that's been done, is that not only do cruciferous vegetables, when they're raw, actually prevent cancers and allow for cellular repair, bring down inflammation in the lungs, and prevent viruses from replicating, but it also prevents the conversion of cells into cancer cells when exposed to carcinogens and things. So I think the fact that people have the high level of nourishment actually protects them from things like pesticides and microplastics, other things, or at least alleviates some of the risk of them causing problems. So because the nutrition is just so much more important for your health.
Okay, thank you. Daniel asks, are there any fruits we should stay away from? And Mary asks, wondering if the Goodbye Lupus protocol corrects under and over thyroid disease.
So for fruits, fruits I just use as a flavoring when it comes to disease reversal. We found that when it comes to reversing disease, for some reason, too much fruit gets in the way. And, my husband and I are known for rapidly reversing illnesses. Why that is, we don't even have time to investigate it, but we do know that to be a fact. When people are already healthy, you can have as much fruit as you want, and it's no big deal. So if you don't have any issues with it, you feel good and you like fruit, go for it. I haven't seen a real difference in terms of changing people's health because the nutrition's coming from the vegetables. You can't get more nutrition than you can get from things like cruciferous vegetables. They've got everything. So that's one. And then hyper and hypothyroid. Yes, I've helped people successfully reverse Hashimoto's all the time. That's one of the most common autoimmune diseases that there is. And Graves' disease as well as thyroid eye disease. Been able to reverse that using our protocols.
Yes, there's a couple of policy questions. So Cindy is our plant-based campaigner in Belgium. So she asks, how would you explain the cost savings and health benefits of your approach in a way that resonates with policymakers? And if you want to answer that first and then go to another question.
Well, if you're looking at, well, one way policymakers might be looking at it would be in terms of government programs, right? So programs like Medicare, Medi-Cal, things like that. If they started to treat it the way Kaiser did, for example, if they start looking at the savings that they could have, because when you start looking at the costs of chronically ill people, you know, the lifetime cost of keeping someone alive with lupus, with Sjogren's, with MS, with diabetes, with heart disease. And the number one cause of death in our country is still heart attacks, even in people with lupus. It's thousands and thousands of dollars a month. And on top of that, these people can't contribute to society because they can't work. They're disabled. And so they become a drain in some ways, right? Because of these illnesses. So as we can educate people to get better, they're going to be more productive in society. They're going to make more income. They're going to pay more taxes. And they're going to need less money in terms of their medications and their disability payments. And you can look those numbers up easily for each illness and say, here's the cost that Medicare is currently paying or Medi-Cal is paying, and what kind of savings could we have? Absolutely, you could do that.
So we often get questions like Agnes is asking, there's a lot of talk about there being spinach being unhealthy or eating it raw can be unhealthy. So can you counter that? Because it's come up a number of times when we do posts.
Yeah, and the facts don't show that to be true. So there's a lot of nutrition mythology out there. And so what I always go to is results, right? If you're just talking about ideas, you can argue all day long, right? That's even in clinical trials and things, right? Someone could say, I had someone say this to me the other day. Someone had cancer and they said, oh, she's still eating ice cream. Isn't that terrible? I said, yeah, the dairy is a carcinogen. She goes, oh no, dairy. I think dairy's fine. It's the sugar I'm worried about. I said, well, the sugar's not helping, but dairy is a carcinogen. This is a person who's a nutritionist. And she goes, I could probably look something up and find something that says the opposite. So you probably could. That doesn't make what I said less true. It just means on the internet currently, you could find opposing ideas, but results are something entirely different. And so, you know, it's like when people bring up, you know, oh, I read something that flax seeds could be bad, or I read something that said this could be that. Okay, great. Let's look at the results. Out of the thousands of people who are eating flax seeds or hypernourishment, how many of them have gotten toxicity? Oh, 0. Okay, right? Same with spinach, right? There are some people who are more sensitive to spinach. Sometimes people have more loose stool with it or something, or maybe it's how clean it is, right? But generally speaking, we've had people, they're using spinach every single day. I use Power Greens every day, which is a mix of spinach and kale. And sometimes if they're out of that, I just buy spinach and perfect health. So you have to look at the people who are doing it and then see what the results show. And if the results show that someone having a pound a day of mixed greens, their cholesterol is going down, their blood pressure is going down, their kidney function is going up, you know, their heart disease is going away, their energy's through the roof. You can't make them shut up because they're just too excited. I think it's all right. You know, so results wise, it's proven now that it's only promoting good health. And so whenever somebody has an idea, I always tell them, listen, because sometimes someone will say, hey, do you want to watch this video from someone who said this, this, and that? And I go, no, I'm not wasting my time on that person's video. It said something, I don't care about that. I said, if this person has results that actually show that something is true, that I'm more interested in, not people's ideas. Ideas are like mouths. Everybody's got one, but it doesn't mean that they're valid, right? But results are something you can't refute. And so that's what I usually say to tell people is if they say this idea, that, I say, okay, that's an interesting idea. Do you have any results that back that up? And if not, you go, okay, well, thanks for sharing. That's it. You don't have to convince every person. And if someone's not interested, you're not going to convince them anyway. So I always say to take the Ted Lasso approach. You ever watch Ted Lasso, Anita?
I did because you mentioned it. So yeah, it was fun.
Because yeah, Ted Lasso is just like, you can't argue with him because no matter what you say or how outrageous it is, he goes, thanks so much for sharing that with me. And then he moves on. Like you don't need to get into a fight everywhere, but if someone's interested, then you go, oh, I have a great website for you. You should check out smoothieshred.com and watch these videos, or try this recipe and just make the smoothie every day for a month and see how you feel, like what you've been doing. And people will learn on their own. But you don't have to be ready for battle every time you go out there. There's people who are open and ready, and there's people who aren't, and you're here for the ones that are.
Thank you. Ellen Dent, she's a young mother, and she's a plant-based campaigner in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And she asked, do you know of any schools that have added green smoothie, green salads, or chia pudding? I saw one of your videos where you said, have a salad bar, which was a brilliant idea. So you don't only have to have green smoothies, that can turn pink or red. But I like your idea. I was just wondering if you have some, well, you mentioned your son, but also like, do you have other experiences of, schools being interested in the green smoothie?
It's interesting because I've had instances where, like when we lived in Austin, the school principal started following me, and he would come up to me in the hallway when I was dropping off my for kindergarten or first grade, and he said, "Hey, my daughter's off dairy, and hey, I'm doing green smoothies," but it wasn't brought to the school. It was just he was doing it. And he told me not to have my son come to school. And the day they brought the dairy industry would come one day to bring the cows and like teach everyone why they should eat dairy to the elementary school. So he told me, just don't even have him come to school. So it was like I had an ally, but in secret. So it hasn't been that great. By the way, hi in Pittsburgh. My husband and I both went to Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. We love Pittsburgh. Yeah, I think that's something that as parents you need to do. I know I've done it as a parent. I always contact the food services people and ask about, hey, do you have salad? Do you have a vegan option? Usually their vegan option is really a vegetarian option, and then you got to ask for no cheese or whatever. But that's an uphill battle, and I think that's something that you have to bring to like the PTA, that you have to bring to the schools, that the kids also need to request. I mean, that's why my son has gotten really interested in this idea that maybe just like how I try to bring health to the people, that maybe he could bring health to the schools as a student, and maybe that'll be heard more, So I think that all of us need to do our part that way to make it an issue. If nobody's speaking up at the school, they have very little reason to change. I'm also interested in, maybe finding out from other schools how they did it, right? Like New York City public schools, how did they do it? And let's look into what they did and how, besides having a mayor that was plant-based, there's some role models now. There are some people that we can look to and find out how they did it. But yeah, that I've done it more as a mom than as a physician or policy person.
Oh, okay, thank you. So the hour's almost up, and we wanted to maybe ask you about how people can learn more. We know people who have taken your 6-week recovery, and it's just been beyond their expectations and very helpful to them from a mental perspective, not just physical. So we're wondering, there are people in the movement, in our movement, who are vegan, but they have autoimmune, and it's just heartbreaking. And
yeah.
how to, I'd love for them to take your 6-week recovery. So could you maybe just explain a bit about the programs you offer, and also your Wellness Wednesdays, where people can join you every Wednesday?
Yeah. Well, the most important thing for my husband and myself is we really believe that good health should be a public right. And that's why we have so much free service, right? So like our Smoothie Shred website is free, and it has our smoothie recipes. It has videos on health and fitness and all those things. That's free. Our Smoothie Shred group on Facebook, that's a free community. Like we really want to just give and raise public awareness as much as possible. I always want people to save their life, and my husband's joke is, and I want to save your wife, right? But we believe that should be a public right. We also know that people need more sometimes. So we do have our books. So Goodbye Lupus, Goodbye Autoimmune Disease, which focuses more on the lifestyle, emotional part, as well as the case studies. And even my recipe book, it was like, all right, we love all the free smoothies, but what if we want to make it more complicated, more exciting? I want to make zucchini cannelloni. I want to make cruciferous lasagna. I want to do, so we, and actually the recipe book is cool because the recipes all are either from my family or from people who've healed in my programs. So as far as I know, it's the only recipe book where everyone in it uses recipes to heal diseases. I think that's super cool. I'm proud of that. But there are some people who need more help. So as I said, I'm also a trauma specialist. And my original thought when I went into this was that, there's Goodbye Lupus, all delicious. Yeah. So when I first went into this, I thought that my big contribution to the medical world was going to be as a person with chronic illness to help other patients learn that they could have a life that's good and happy and passionate and fruitful even with illness, to not let the illness become your identity, but to let it just be one thing that you deal with as you move through life to live your purpose. And I thought that was going to be my imprint. And then when I reversed my disease, I was like, oh, well, maybe there's more I need to do. But what I found to be true is it's both. That as much as I give the nutrition information away, and yet there are people who either because of their emotional issues can't get themselves to do it or stick with it, or their emotional stress and trauma is so big that that's creating inflammation that combats the nutrition, that they need my help there. And so my programs are really all targeted to help people get healthy as fast as humanly possible. That's why they're called rapid recovery programs. So while people can meet with me just for a session, I do 75-minute sessions. I get to know you and what gets in your way, what your strengths are, and devise a way to help you get there. And I give them like 10 pages of notes. Here's how you go from where you are now all the way to maintenance. My most popular programs are things like my group, where every day I'm looking at, I always say it's like the Jewish mother you didn't know you needed on your shoulder every day. So, you know, what did you eat and how did you sleep and how's your stress and what did you do for self-care? What did you do to help yourself feel loved and special today? Right. And so we help each individual within that group with their own personal stuff. And it's different in each one. Some people need to learn boundaries at work. Some people need to learn boundaries in their relationship. Some people need to start actually treating themselves like they matter instead of like they don't. And some people have to learn how to stop being, I call it that vampire food, you know, where like everybody's feeding off them and they're just dying, like in the vampire movie, there's just like one human in chains in the corner, right? But I have found that if I teach people how to be loving to themselves and release anxiety, release stress, I help people through trauma, through forgiveness, that their lives get better immediately. And suddenly the autoimmune disease or other illness they're dealing with is actually less of an issue, because if I could be happy right now, even with the disease, life's already good. And then healing's a bonus. And that's why what you said is true. Everyone who finishes my rapid recovery group, they always say, yes, my cholesterol's normal. My kidneys are working great. My arthritis is gone. But the best part is I love my life. I feel so happy. I feel so joyful. And so that's always, I can't help it. That's always the goal with people is that if I can help you love your life and find your purpose, and your disease gets better at the same time, well, now I've released someone who's going to create even more greatness in the world. Because you could be, you know, trying to make a difference for the animals. You could be trying to make a difference for the planet, for policy and all these things. And if you're in so much pain and so sick that you can barely move, you're not making the difference that we need you to. So I always tell even my clients, in my group, that, you know, the world needs you. You've got to treat yourself as important, because you have a mission. Like every other person, you have a mission and a gift. And so every time you drink that smoothie, every time you eat your salad, you're getting yourself ready to give all that you were meant to give. That's how you load up in your superpower. It's how it's like you can't make calls without charging your phone. So I charge them up emotionally and with enough sleep and with the right food. And people are absolutely unrecognizable a month later. And that's, I love to do that. My husband and I, we love taking care of people. So we spend a lot of hours every day working with our group and our rapid recovery people. But again, you can see me for free all the time. If you like this, tomorrow, 12:30 Pacific, every Wednesday, I'm live on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook on my page, Goodbye Lupus. If you look up Goodbye Lupus, you'll find me in all of those areas. And I come on and do coaching, and then I take questions. And I try to help people figure out how they can overcome their issues and just do the thing that their body needs them to do. And of course, that the planet needs them to do as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brooke Goldner. You're so unique in terms of, being a trauma psychiatrist and a medical doctor, and your husband being an expert on metabolism and quickening it. And it's just, you're such a and your son, trying to do policy change. So I think, we just wish there were like millions of you. So as somebody said in the chat, we're all we're on the ground and we're trying to spread the word, and we very much appreciate that you're willing to engage with policymakers if we find those opportunities, because
heck yeah,
we'd love that, because we really want to scale
up. Get me in the room and we can lock the door, and I'll yeah, and thank you for what you're doing, because that's what we need. We need everyone to do their part. There's only so much each of us can do, right? But making change in policy will change everything. And it's super important. So thanks for including me in what you're doing. And yeah, it's really cool.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Brooke Goldner. We really appreciate it.
You're so welcome.
Thanks
Yeah,
everybody
thank
for
you so
joining.
much.
Great.
And thanks everybody for being here. I'm loving all these chat comments. It's awesome.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining and the great questions we had. Sorry we didn't get around to them all, but you could always try Brooke's live on Wednesdays, because I know she answers questions in the chat there as well. But yeah, thanks so much everyone for joining.
Bye.
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 Thanks.